Congratulations.
We are live and you're on Global TV Talk Show, and this is International Women's Day, and I'm really honored to have these people here, and more will be joining us as scheduled. And we're going to run about 100 minutes or so. You can leave anytime if you need to. And I want you all to use the chat and introduce yourselves with website or ask a question, because that's your ROI. I think primarily that's what you can do tomorrow with the relationships that are forming right now. So Bindu, I'd like you to meet Sandra Corona, who's coming to us from Eastern Saudi Arabia.
Yes. Hi, Sandra.
Welcome.
We're connected already on LinkedIn, so we kind of
Yes,
chat briefly.
exactly, Bindu. Nice to see you again.
Nice.
Okay, and here's Annalisa again. You met last week from England, Hull, England, which is north. How far north from London? I can't hear you.
Put myself on mute so you didn't hear my dog's background noises. So we're a couple of 100 miles from London. So on the coast, on the east coast of England.
And so there must be train. There's trains everywhere across the area. How long does it take by train to get into central London?
Yeah, so we have our own train service. We have Hull Trains. It goes direct without a stop, so it's 2.5 hours.
Oh, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
Okay, so Bindu, I want to introduce these beautiful people here. Gail Watson is the CEO and founder of the Women's Speakers Association. Bindu started a company a long time ago, what, 17 years ago, something? 15?
Close to, 15
About,
plus.
called Relo India, which is a service to help people who are being relocated. And on the past program on which you spoke, you described how interesting and how diverse India is, with all the different states and the different cultures and even the local languages and dialects in so many places across your country. Would you like to address that in the next 30 seconds?
Sure. I'm very proud of my country, because I always say this in every training program that India, I tell every expat who comes in here, don't look at India as a country at all. You're not moving to a country, you're moving to a continent. So if you have an assignment in, let's say, Bangalore, and then, you work there for 2 years, and then if you were asked to go to, let's say, Kolkata, which is a city in the east, it's completely different. It's as good as moving from one country to another. Yeah, we have different languages. Completely different languages. When I say that people in Kolkata in the east will not speak anything like what people speak in Bangalore, the language, the vernacular, the festivals will be different, the costumes will be different, and just that we all look alike. And I was looking at Google the other day and said, Google has brown skin for Indians. That's because we don't have a problem being brown skin, but they think that brown skin is India. It's not. You will be surprised to see the number of fair-skinned, women or men or everybody in India. So that's how diverse we are. And I can't say this in 30 seconds, Edwin. I'm so sorry. My country is too big and too diverse and too beautiful for me to just, capsule it in 30 seconds. So
okay, so I'm not going to put any restrictions on anybody, but I do have to be a happy TV talk show host. So Dr. Lynn Schmidt is my partner in this series, which I've named Global Business Women in Leadership Roles, Creating a Culture for Well-Being, not only in the workplaces, but at home and in the communities. Lynn, that's a mouthful. Would you like to summarize your anti-sexist book?
Yeah, absolutely. And in the last year since the book came out, there's been a lot of changes. And I'm going to be honest here, and I hope we're all honest on this discussion. They haven't been good. women's rights have been backsliding. And so I think while it's important on International Women's Day to talk about the positives, it's also important to raise the issues and solutions to the issues, because if we don't do that, nothing's going to change. And I've got a couple of things I'd like to share to just really set the stage today for International Women's Day. I did a post on LinkedIn, and I just want to read it to kick off the session, because it got a lot of response, which to me, it's not about how many likes or anything I got, but it's the fact that this post had a lot of impact for women and men. And so far it's had 4,500 responses and 550 shares. And the post was very simple. It was a meme, and it was a quote that I opened chapter 1 of my book with. And the quote is, "The abuse of women and girls is the most pervasive and unaddressed human rights violation on earth. Women's inequality has profoundly affected the world." And that quote is from Jimmy Carter, the 39th US president and winner of the 2002 Nobel Peace Prize. And as I said, to say, I think that's being honest, and I believe it. And that's why I wrote my book. And then he wrote a book in 2014. So this is all fairly recent. And he did his TED Talk on this topic in 2015. And he ended his TED Talk with this: "There's one more basic cause that I need not mention, and that is that in general, men don't give a damn." That's true. The average man that might say, "I'm against the abuse of women and girls," quietly accepts the privileged position that we, meaning men, occupy. So I think as we move into this and we think about International Women's Day, that's some important information. And Ed, usually you'll ask me, what do I mean by abuse? Because many of us, when we hear abuse, we think physical, we think domestic violence. Abuse is really the 4 outcomes of sexism that I talk about in my book. It's microaggression, so it's the insults, it's the toxic language that we experience regularly on and off the job. It's discrimination, whether it's in the workplace, whether it's healthcare, education. Women are discriminated against just about everywhere. It's harassment, whether that's street harassment, work harassment, whether that's bullying, which women are now talking about the bullying that they experience. And then it's violence, and that is the domestic abuse, that is the rape, that is the coercive control, which is the financial, mental, psychological abuse that women may experience from a partner and loved one. And so abuse covers all of those things. The other thing I want to mention to set the stage today is that yesterday the United Nations released its annual report on gender equality. And let me just say this to everyone, it is not good. The report, the number of years that it will take for women to gain equality has increased since last year, and the number of years is 300. Now, the United Nations measures each country. That's a combined average. They look at various things like women's role in politics and education, their financial capabilities and contribution, education. They look at many things, but 300 years, and that's database, and it has increased since last year. So I think when we take a look at all of these things, and the last thing I want to mention is sexism, which leads to those 4 outcomes, and those 4 outcomes will escalate. So if we don't stop microaggression, someone could easily think it's okay and escalate to discrimination or harassment. If we don't stop that, they could easily think that's okay, and that's when they might escalate to violence. So we need to understand that escalation path. And the other thing it's important to understand is we are all sexist. The United Nations also did a research on this, looking at 80% of the countries worldwide, and 9 out of 10 people, men and women, were found to have at least one deeply ingrained bias against women and girls. Now, we can't get rid of our biases, but we can become aware and manage them, which I'm sure that's what many of us do. But I think we need to understand that both women and men can be sexist, and that We can't get rid of those biases, but we can only become aware and manage them. So I think those 3 points, the quote that it's the most pervasive, the abuse of women and girls and human rights violation, that is 300 years, we'll reach gender equality, and it stays that every year. So 300 years, just keep tacking it on because we're not doing enough to change it. And the fact that we're all sexist. So I think that those are important things to lay the foundation for this meeting. And let's not just talk about the good things. Let's raise the issues because they're there, and let's talk about solutions.
Let's go to Tineke Renson, who has an extremely successful business for several years, highly energetic person, and she's been on our program many times. Thank you very much, Tineke. Your attitudes, your views of feminism, masculinity, why don't you address that?
Thank you, Ed, and pleased to meet you, all of you ladies. I feel honored to share this stage here with all of you today, because I assume we're all very busy today on the 8th of March specifically. So it shows, Ed, how much goodwill you have amongst all of us and how much you give us this stage. Thank you very much.
Oh, I'm honored.
My journey started before I was born. I was supposed to be a boy. There was no girl's name. I had to be the boy carrying on the family name. I'm the firstborn. Well, I was a girl. So I was named after my mom. But somehow that energy possibly stuck on me. So I was a tomboy, playing with boys, playing with trains, cars, climbing trees, doing male sports such as whitewater kayaking, not just normal skiing, but mogul skiing, freestyle skiing. So I started a business which was all around outdoor and survival sports. Whitewater kayaking, climbing, hiking. I became national champion in whitewater kayaking around the world, expeditions, a lot of first ones. Grand Canyon was one, first descent of a Dutch woman. So I was a go-getter. I was a very masculine woman. Although I always put makeup on, I always dressed in feminine clothes, I was a masculine woman. And I was not aware of that. I just noticed that I was different from a lot of other women. And I had the masculine attitude around that as well. I was a sexist, Lynn, really I was. I was judging women. I was like, oh, they play small. They never speak for themselves. Why are they always complaining and moaning? So I didn't know that there was another way of looking at it. Until one of my coaches said to me, Tineke, it seems that you have not really accepted and allowed the feminine part of you. And that became a journey. And that's been going on for the past 12 years. And the more and more I work with women, since 12 years, I help business women scale and grow their businesses. And the past few years, I start to notice how much more difficult it is for women to do business. It's not just in politics and in organizations, but the same happens for business women building businesses. The same biases are there. Doing business is a masculine thing. And the masculine woman succeeds. The feminine woman has a lot of difficulties because it is such a masculine environment, a patriarchal world we live in. And it's in words, such as I had a man writing the copy of my website, and he called me spirit warrior. Well, a warrior is masculine. Women don't like warriors, well, as their husband maybe, but not as being a warrior, or they are a masculine woman, and that's fine. But many women don't know that they are masculine. They don't know the difference between masculine and feminine. And it's not about, hi, that is not what I'm talking about, the feminine. It's about listening to your gut feeling, that's the masculine word, we would say intuition. Daring to trust, daring to allow to not know, being vulnerable, showing emotions. Masculine thinks it's weak to cry in a meeting. But sometimes we just can't stop it because we have to say something which is so vulnerable and so difficult for us. And it takes so much guts. The tears just come. We can't stop them. But that's not weak. That's expressing extreme vulnerability and guts. So there's a lot of misunderstanding about women in the workforce, about business women. We're being trained to fit into a masculine system. We're being trained by books that are written by men, programs, models, teachings, all of them are developed by men. And I honor men for that, because that's who they are. And they all, a lot of men want to support us, but they support us in the way they know. And that's not the way that always helps us. So that's my story, and I'm rebranding myself now on this topic. So I'm not only helping business women to scale and grow their businesses, but I really want to create awareness for this massive, massive subconscious bias that women are pushed into a masculine system. They can only succeed if they become masculine, but then nobody likes them. The women don't like them, but the men also don't like them, because they're not natural anymore and they don't feel at home. They lose themselves, they burn up in that environment, and then what? So
yeah, if you're I just want to step in before she finishes, because India, despite all that the world has a view about India, we had a woman prime minister far, far earlier, in the 70s, much, much earlier than anybody else. I don't think America still has had a woman president till date. We had a strong and very powerful Indian prime minister. Her success in politics was that she ran few terms after that. And then today, since you're talking about how women in business, the masculine and the feminine, our finance minister today, Nirmala Sitharaman, if you Google her, she is a traditional Indian woman wearing a sari and a braid. She doesn't make any bones about being masculine for her role, but she controls the finance for the country. 1.39, 1.4 plus billion people across segments, across states and strata of society. And she is strong and fierce, and she's all woman with her red dot on the forehead and the sari elegantly. So I think those are the people who inspire me. I mean, there are people who can be absolutely feminine in their grace and elegance and yet command that. There's so many business women, of course, I can quote, but a very interesting point, Tineke, that you brought, that I wanted to bring in an India perspective here, an insight that I could share.
Thank you very much.
I think the best is when we harmonize, when we have both. So not become a masculine woman, but use the strategies, use the systems, use the words when needed, use the energy. I can come across very masculine because I have a powerful voice. I use a lot of gestures. But I'm also feminine. I'm very intuitive. So I think those things for men and women work very well together.
Let's go to Barbara Bold, and then I want to introduce Dr. Natalie Forrest. Barbara?
There we go. Sorry, had to get off mute. Am I? Yeah, I'm off mute. So I'm at an event today called Fempreneur. It's in Novi, Michigan, and there are 100 ladies here. They sold out their 100 tickets and also sold out all of their exhibitor tables. And this entire event is a showcase for women who have their own businesses, large and small. Some of it's retail, some of it's professional or coaching, that kind of thing. And it's really empowering and exciting to be here with all these ladies who are forging their own path. And I apologize for the noise. And doing their own thing. I think it's so important that we create spaces for women. It may seem like this is a bit exclusive because there are just a few men here. However, there have to be these spaces also where women just support each other, because we can do it even though men can be supportive. And we've got this wonderful host, Ed, who gives us this forum and is always so supportive of our endeavors. But it's that idea that we have to support each other. I think everybody has probably experienced or knows the story of women not being supportive of each other. And Lynn, I don't know if that's maybe even a chapter in your book. I'm not sure, but it's sometimes there can be that competitiveness. Maybe it's competitiveness. You can call it cattiness. And I know I've been guilty of it myself. It's something that it's almost an impulse, I think, that maybe we don't want to see another woman do well, but we really have to fight those impulses, because unless we stand together and unless we do support each other, even though our businesses may be disparate, that we may not do the same thing, we have to stand for each other. Because the shocking statistic that Lynn shared with us, that gender equality might happen in 300 years, I mean, holy moly, that's a long time. And we, can we take micro actions in our own lives that could possibly speed that up a little? And one of the other things I want to mention about this event I'm at today, it's multi-generational. There are young women here as well. And those of us who are of a certain age and who have more experience and have come along a path owe it to this younger generation or these younger generations to share with them our stories, but also encourage them to shift that needle. It's, we've got to gradually start pushing this needle toward equality. And it does seem stubborn. It seems incredibly stubborn. And it's frustrating. I think it's frustrating for all of us. At my age, I mean, I have experienced things at this age that I experienced in my 20s. Why is that still happening? Why is that still happening? And it's all about education. It's all about helping people stand their ground. I do work in the area of communication, helping people communicate with confidence, coming across, and we had a presentation on that this morning from a woman who talks about image and being consistent in how you put yourself out there. All of that is incredibly important across the age range, so that we can help younger women not be in the same place when they're 40 years on that we are today. And Ed, just thank you so much for hosting this. It's fantastic. And I'm so glad that Gail came today. The book that we are both promoting and that she's responsible for founding is this Voices of the 21st Century. And the subtitle of this year's edition is Women Transforming the World. And I just love it. I'm so glad that I got involved in the project in the year that's the subtitle, because I think it's super powerful. Not that the other subtitles haven't also been brilliant, but for me, this whole topic of transformation, and every woman on this call is involved in transforming the world. So all of us we're a sisterhood of women who are making that extra effort. And maybe we're making that extra effort for all of the women out there who just have to focus on their survival. And they can't maybe take those extra steps. They can't be on a stage. They may not have written a book, but they're just as important. Every woman is just as important as every other woman.
Let's go to the real revolutionary here is Dr. Natalie Forrest. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Ed. Lovely to see everybody. And yeah, I'm going to revolutionize this conversation just for a moment. I'm going to hijack it for a moment. We've got Mark and we've got Ed here, two men. And thank you so much for the comment about India. The conversations that I often see are using a language that has been prescribed to us by let's just say 1500 male leaders. And we keep using them and thereby really ourselves fostering that conversation. Okay, I'm a historian by trade. So historically seen, women have actually always led. We have in history so many women leading before there was a switch to the more masculine leadership. And when we look at the words feminine and masculine, they have little to do with how we're using it nowadays, etymologically speaking. It just means, for example, feminine in its origin only means the one who can bear children. And I think that's pretty true even in 2023, even with all of the advancements in technology. So if we're using the same language, and I loved how Tineke was saying, tomboy earlier, because how many of us are using the term tom girl? If we think about it, we don't, but it does also exist. So to me, and everybody has said it in one way or another, what matters is that we see each other as human beings and not as a woman, as a man, as a he, she, it, as we're all humans first. And if we look at the word human, hue stands for color, and man does not mean man, it stands for mass or matter. So really, we are a colorful matter, and we come from the earth, we go back to the earth, is the religious interpretation of that. So if we start looking at each other as individual human beings, some of us have long hair, others short hair, some of us are more masculine, energetically speaking, because that's a different conversation if we're going to energy, right? And that's what Tineke, of course, was also referring to, the female and the male energy. And when we connect them, that's when it shines. And if we're thinking about feminism or the women's movements, who actually has helped highlight the issues? I mean, it was those people that had the power to let voices be heard, and they happen to be men. So when women and men come together, that's when it's powerful. So when Ed and Mark are here to support us, that's when it's powerful. And it doesn't mean that Ed is going to walk around, showing his muscles, oh my man, oh my man. No, he has a lot of feminine energy, and we all can use it. And Tineke is so right. As also Lynn, you are, and forget Barbara, was also saying, if we are too male, it's male, not necessarily masculine. If we're acting too male-like, then we're, the itch word with a B in front of it, because then we're itching people the wrong way. So to me, it all comes back to the language that we use. And if we're using the existing language, like I used to work on that with my students, I work on that especially with women right now, because and with doctors, but especially with women who we're juggling all these things because we can. Let's face it, we've always juggled everything. We ran the households and the accounting and everything else because the men worked hard in the field and couldn't do it anymore. Yes, but we're so used to it, we've forgotten who we are. So that's why we don't just step up like you ladies. You're like, hey, I'm sometimes a little male, I'm sometimes a little female, but I'm me. And we have the strength and the confidence to cry in public. And that is crucial. We need to be able to cry in public. And not because we're female or male, because if we look at all of the female leaders today, they're hugging each other and they're caring. Nurturing is the key word here, not male or female, nurturing. And so just wanted to, hijack this for a moment and focus a little bit on the language that we use, because that, I think, is the crux of the issue.
Jana, isn't the space business mostly male?
It is, and I'm loving this conversation, because one of the things that I'm just really thinking through as you're talking is we've worked very hard to get away from manned and unmanned spaceflight. It's a crew, right? So, and when you just made the comment about who says Tom girl, right? Because we have these words in the language that basically just are a given, and that we don't necessarily, it's not necessarily for mankind that we've taken a giant leap, it's humankind. And so I think that I see it especially, so, and I'm also very intrigued by when you're saying we just all need to blend together, right? We're human, and we need to recognize that it's a quality that's important. And in fact, I think for me, I don't know about anybody else on this call, but I have twins that are now 24, and I held down a job, and I was a mom, and I ran a house, and I did everything that needed to get done. And when I think about a spouse who their responsibility is to get up, have a cup of coffee, read the paper, and go to their job, well, somebody else needs to make the lunch, get someone out the door, then go to their job, right? It's actually a much harder role and we don't take enough credit for it. And I think the subtle micro changes that were mentioned earlier. So applauding in the workplace, somebody who is a man who leaves at 4 o'clock to go to a baseball game for his son or daughter is something that as women, that's how we're going to get equality, is when we make it a non-gender role of it's your mom's job or it's your dad's job, or he's a stay-at-home dad, right? Or she's a stay-at-home mom. Like a caregiver is a single person who does that job. Why wouldn't you do that together? And if we can, in gentle ways, encourage that behavior, even in the workplace, that is very structured about, well, a man's job is to be here until 7 o'clock, and your job is to go home and cook the dinner for somebody else, right? And it's subtle and small, but it's huge. And because I think as we make those overtures in the workplace to encourage men to be caregivers for their family, as well as see their job as an important part of their life, which is what we do on a daily basis, maybe we start to see small change. So Ed, I really appreciate you giving us the opportunity to have this conversation today. And I think it's fascinating. I love the comments that are coming through on this conversation.
Well, this is very cool. And thank you for helping me build my audience, because it's worldwide and growing. And Jana, someday you'll take me into outer space with the audience, right?
Well, and you know, I guess the other piece that I have to mention here is that for me, I've always been in my whole career, same thing, like Tineke was saying, very transparent to me. Like I wasn't a woman, I was just a person who did a good job. And so, but I've been stopped many times in my tracks with people saying, oh, okay, I think the past just met the future, right? Because to me, I'm thinking I'm just doing what I would normally do. And someone else is seeing that as you're a woman and you're doing that, or, you know, the kinds of jobs that we even think about traditionally as being men. And for as much as the space industry is all men, I mean, very much kind of a 1960s attitude of kind of old guys, right? Who have just always kind of had the power and been the ones to say, this is what we do. I'm super proud, even at our own company, our commander for our next private astronaut mission is Peggy Whitson. And what most people don't realize is as an astronaut, she holds the record for 638 days in space, not consecutively, and was the first woman commander of the International Space Station. On this mission, which is going to have 4 crew members, we also have the first woman from the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia who is going to be flying. So we are using our platform to try to give a lot of visibility to the fact that around the world, we need to give women opportunities to do things that they've never done before and show our younger generation they can do anything and to really think big.
Can I again, sorry, come back just to give you an India insight here. If you know the Indian Space Research Organization, ISRO, you'll be fascinated to see the number of women who are working there. In fact, I have an image when I just Googled of all the women who look so traditional in their saris and their braids, and you know, even jasmine flowers in the office, and you'll be shocked to see how they're doing fantastic big projects in the space of space.
Right. Well, and I think even Hidden Figures, right? Everybody's seen the movie, and it's women behind the scenes that have always been very powerful, even in those networks where they're male dominated. But the truth is we're moving to the forefront, and we're starting to show that those roles that maybe traditionally people would not have thought about as women in those roles, and it's, for me, you always hear the astronauts when they come back talk about the overview effect, how they've really been changed by seeing our planet from a different perspective, and how there are no borders and there are no divisions. And even when they're on the International Space Station, that's probably the most powerful collaboration, even in times when on our own planet, there are wars or political divisions. There can't be any there. So that community and that spirit of collaboration and seeing everyone as one, and the opportunity for us to use that mentality and bring that back down to our own planet and help everyone to understand there shouldn't be divisions, there shouldn't be differences. We're all people and we all need to help each other. So yeah, fascinating conversation.
Thank you so much. This is really deep and the scope is great. Mark Colo, thanks for joining me and this group. So Parkinson's doesn't restrict itself to males, right?
No, it does not. They say it's the gift that keeps on taking. So it doesn't, it's gender free. So I want to just say I'm very pleased and very happy to be on this call with all of you. Helen Keller said the bend in the road is not the end of the road unless you fail to make the turn. And you ladies are making the turn. And I'm very, very proud for you doing that, your courage and your thoughts. I feel like I can add very little to this. The only thing that comes to mind is I think I was demasculinized. Is that the right word? I went through demasculinization. I'll shake a little bit more right now because I take my morning pills at 8 a.m. It's a ritual I have to do. And my body instantly tries to fight it and get it out of my system. So I have to deal with that sometimes. But I want to just talk about the jump I made. I made a jump from Southern California. I lived in Newport Coast for 16 years. My neighbors included Kobe Bryant, Karl Malone, Vanna White, Dean Koontz. I'm not trying to show off here by any means, but life was good. By the end of the year, I was diagnosed with EOPD, early onset Parkinson's disease. No pressure, right? I had a wife, I had 3 children under the age of 10, and it was not an easy place to be. But, I always look at my mother. I admire my mother, and we can never downplay the role of a mother. You cannot. I mean, we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for a mother. And I'm sure thankful that women have that privilege of going through that, producing and having a child, where I know I would buckle under that. I wouldn't have any chance of getting through that. I just know that for a fact. But women have the strength and courage to do that. So my mantra and philosophy these days is adaptability proliferates possibilities. Having Parkinson's is one of adaptation. Janet up there, she probably knows as well as anyone on the call here today how Parkinson's can make its inroads. It can impact at least 65 important critical functions of the human body. It can compromise those things. Now, just one is tough for some people, but when you got Parkinson's, you got a lot going on there, a lot moving. So, but I'm thankful for the role and example of my mother. When I was 3 years old, my parents divorced. I didn't have a real easy childhood. We moved 10 times before my mom remarried a police officer. Now, they have some stereotypes out there about policemen being a little bit chauvinistic. I think you've probably heard that before. We came into our house and finally at age 19, I said, I got to get out of here. It's time for me to get out of here. This is too tough for me. So I was demasculinized, or lated, I guess it is, from the very beginning. So I packed my bags. I hopped on an airplane. I flew to Northern Ireland and completed a 2-year church service mission at a time of great civil unrest referred to as the hunger strike. Some of you might recognize that time period. It's not easy, but came home with and made it through all that. But through all of my experiences in life, my mother has always been there to help me. And my hat's off to her. She raised 2 boys all on her own. She didn't have a degree. didn't know what she was going to do for work when my dad flew the coop. And, you know, that was a hard place for her to be. But she got through it. And she, fortunately, back then, you didn't have all the credential requirements and certification requirements that they have now for going into dentistry. She found a dental assistant's job just from walking in off the street. And that paid the bills, and that, you know, got us through some of the tough times. We got us through our 10 moves. And so I know about hardship. I know about challenges. I know about going through things, but I know about strength of women too. And heaven forbid anyone insults a woman in my presence, I'll let them have it, because I just know how tough it is sometimes for all of us, right? And one last thought I want to leave is there's a word that I hear all the time in my new venue here. I relocated to a place called St. George. And every time I go through a drive-through, they repeat my order, and then they say, perfect. I heard that word perfect, so I think that should be taken out of the vocabulary. Because nothing's perfect, no one's perfect. You might think you are, but you're not. I still get shortchanged on the hot sauce when I'm going through the Del Taco. But I think that should be stricken right out of the vocabulary is perfect, because no one is perfect. I'm not perfect. Maybe Ed's perfect, but and Janet, you might be perfect, because I know some of your background. You're all perfect in my eyes, but you're not perfect, right? You know what I'm trying to say. Anyway, so those are kind of the thoughts that have been running through my mind as I'm sitting here witnessing and listening and taking it in. And I've learned so much from each one of you. I hope you continue on your crusade for doing what's right and be authentic. I think another thing is remember to be authentic. People will like you for who you are and what you're trying to do. You don't have to put on facades or try and be somebody else. Just be authentic. I think you guys are going to go far.
So I want to go back to Tineke for a word, and then we need to hear from Sandra Corona and Melinda Stallings and Annalisa Landa. Tineke. Oh.
I was just typing a message in the chat to Mark. Thank you so much for cheering us on. Thank you so much for empowering us. We really need men. We cannot do this. We've all said it, and you're showing such a beautiful example. And I'm getting emotional because this is what thank you so much for being you and for doing this for us. That's all I wanted to say, Ed. I love everything that's being said. And what I also love is we all have our different angles, but we all recognize all of it. At least if I'm speaking for myself, that's how I feel. So yeah, I'm having a great time here. Thank you.
Yeah, it's been a real fast-paced 40 minutes. Let's go to Sandra Corona in Saudi Arabia. I can't hear you.
Corona.
Okay.
Can you hear me? Okay,
Yeah.
Great. Hi, everybody. This is Sandra Corona. Mark, thank you so much for your beautiful words and for everybody else that's come before me. I honestly do not know if I can, compete with everything that's being said here. I think every single experience that I hear, the situation, it's not something that I don't know of, which is sad. I think it's sad because when we talk about women supporting women, I have a story about that. When we talk about harassment, I have a story about that, about bullying and shaming and being a tomboy. And somehow I feel, and I've always think about people like us that gather here in this room and talk. I think that we were at some point, some of us, silent. We were told that we were better seen and not heard, and our voice was somehow silenced. And it wasn't until someone, somewhere, told us, you have a voice, and you had to go through the process of discovering what was your voice and what was the message that you wanted to get out there. But in that process, you have all of these emotions that you go through. and all of these experiences that you have to live, like Tineke experiencing and realizing that she was a tomboy and then becoming a woman, and now seeing both sides of the spectrum, right? Where you want to do all these things, but yet you're limited by who you are. And so for me, when I talk about what I do in values and beliefs, I'm somewhat of a researcher. I believe I am a researcher because in global mobility, which is helping expats, we play a role. There is no other role other than to play the role of a man and a woman. And that's it. And living here in Saudi Arabia, I have to say, I was very happy to first come here and say, oh, I'm not going to work. This is so great. I'm going to have time off. And then as time passed by, I realized that that I would talk to, the Saudi women that I would talk to, did not have a voice, not because they had the choice, but because they didn't have a choice. And I had the choice. And yet I was choosing to be a housewife, to just be, live life and do things and just cook and do all these things. And I started feeling unsatisfied. And then I saw how great men had it, and this is in no way a way to say, oh, men are, having it great here. No, but what I'm trying to say is that men here in Saudi Arabia have discovered something that men are yet to discover around the world. And that is camaraderie. That is communication amongst them. If there's something that you will see a Saudi do, a male Saudi do, is to be on the phone with his friends, or to have the coffee or the date and talk about things and experiences and this and that. And you do not see women doing that. So I see here that men have a beautiful relationship amongst them. They kiss their cheeks. They have so much high respect for each other. They treat each other with such a beautiful respect. And I still see now that the country has changed and grown and has progressed, I do see women in the workplace, but their voices are still minimized. They still don't have a say. And so I told my husband about 8 years ago, I told him, I don't want to grow old in Saudi Arabia, because I knew that if I would stay here longer, I would become like this culture. It would be normal for me to stay quiet. It would be normal for me to just see my husband come home and ask him, how was your day? Because my day was so boring, right? But one of the things that has changed is that in this journey that I've been going through to help expats, is that I have discovered support from males incredibly. I've been going through a journey of finding my voice in the past 5 years. And one of the people that I discovered in my journey was Ed. And one of the people that I listened to talk to was Mark. And I've had male coaches, and they've been kind and gentle. And one of the persons that I get to talk to every single day is my husband. He is my cheerleader. He is the person that tells me what to do, what not to do, how to think. And that is not because I don't know how to think, but because I've been off the workforce and we've been staying here for too long that your brain just like capsizes, it just starts becoming small. And so I think that if women had an easier way to find a voice, I don't know if it's easy to say, look, I too did not have a voice and I found this, and this is how I can help you. And you do want to go out there, but there's a bad experience that I had about not being supported by a woman. And that's sad. And so it's, with every step of the way that I've taken in this journey, being here in Saudi Arabia, I've experienced good and bad. But overall, I have to say that looking at all these amazing women here that you've gathered, it's incredible. I'm thinking, where have all these women been? How can I, how is it possible that I did not get to know them sooner? Because women really, we are amazing. And at some point I got to think, and I'm going to be very, very honest here, I got to think that we didn't need men. But the more I live, the more I realize that I could not be who I am without my male partner, without those words, without the encouragement, without the help, without, the lessons. And I wish I knew more female authors. Somebody was saying here that there were, more male authors than females. But if I knew of a book that was similar, let's say, to The Writer's Journey that was written by a female, I would definitely go and buy it. But I don't think that we have enough support between females to say, hey, this book is similar to this, or this experience is similar to this. I haven't seen that only in makeup. Where they say this color, if you buy Chanel, you buy it from Sticks, and it's the same color. That's all I've seen. But when it comes to books and experience and knowledge, I don't see that. And I really would like for people to approach me and ask me, because I have so much material, and I'm pretty sure there's so many women here too that have so much material to share, and I would do it without any compromise, let's put it that way. So thank you, everybody. Thank you, Ed. That's what I have to say, because I really do not have the experience of all these females other than me living here in Saudi Arabia and working with expats. But it's the support that we have amongst us, and that's what I'm valuing today. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, Sandra. Dr. Natalie, I'm sorry that you have to leave us. Would you like to quickly say something? And then we'll go to Dr. Lynn and also to Gail and Annalisa and Melinda.
Yes, thank you. I just want to say thank you, ladies, and Sandra. You have so much to say. So you don't just work with expat. You just said a lot. And I thank you for that. Thank you, everybody. I know that there'll be more of these. And Ed, I'm going to put a little seed in that magnificent brain of yours. Maybe a topic in the future could be femicide as well. And with that, I will head out. Thank you.
Thank you. Lynn?
Yeah, exactly. It's interesting she said femicide, because, we talked about that on last week's call, and I deal with that in my book as well. There's a couple of things I wanted to say, because I mentioned let's focus on not just what's wonderful, but what we need to fix and what are actions we can take. And I think Barbara said, when you talk about 300 years, it can be rather daunting. And it's what can we do individually? She mentioned micro changes. What can we do individually? And when you look at the 4 outcomes of sexism, the first one is microaggression. And that is the insults, the toxic language, but it's also things we take for granted, like tomboy. There's words that we use, there's things that we say that are actually microaggression. That's an important place to start. We can all look at our language that we use, the words that we use that are actually insults to women and girls. Throw like a girl, run like a girl, all of those sorts of things. Blonde jokes, Karen, using Karen to classify a irate woman is a sexist insult, but it becomes commonplace. I've heard children using Karen now, not realizing what they're actually saying is bitch. So it's important, I think microaggression is a place where we can all start with micro change, not only our own, but it's also something that's easier, I think, to call someone else out on when you hear it. And not rudely, not in anger, but simply say, what did you mean by that? And here's how I interpret that. And here's how it impacted me. Or if it's happened to someone else, don't speak for them. But as I said, here's how it impacted me when you said that. So that's a key place to start. And I think the other thing I want to bring up, since she brought it up before she left, is femicide. Because we'll often hone in on, when we think about sexism, International Women's Day, we'll hone in on the workplace. But when you look at the outcomes of sexism, which are microaggression, harassment, which more than 50% of women say they're harassed on the job. Discrimination, more than 50% of women say they've been discriminated against, whether on the job, it could be by their doctor, it could be in the education world. Then there's violence, and femicide is an aspect of violence, and I do cover it in my book. And femicide is when you're murdered because of your gender, because you're a woman. And 80,000 plus women were murdered in a year, according to UN research, intentionally murdered in a year. That's 200 women a day. And what I have to say is, where's the outrage about that? Where is the outrage? More than half of those women were murdered by people they knew, family members or partners. Where is the outrage? That's 5 women an hour. Where is the outrage about that? Who's talking about it? Who's upset about it? Who today is going to read 80,000 names and pause and reflect on what those women went through? So that's femicide, and it's important to talk about, because if we don't stop microaggression, if we don't stop harassment, if we don't stop discrimination, it can escalate. And I have lots of examples of men who started with microaggression, harassed, and because it was accepted, it escalated to violence. And so I think going back to what can we do, let's stop it early on, ourselves and others. So thanks, Ed.
I'm
Excuse me,
speechless.
thank
So,
you very much.
yeah, let's
Sorry, I have to
go
leave.
quickly to Gail. 1 second, please. Gail?
Yeah, Lynn, I love your strong words there. And I love when you're saying, what can we do? Because action is really important. I mean, it's all fun to bring awareness on International Women's Day, but we have to do this every day. And it is sharing our stories and our messages that help create that change 100%. It is by getting to know each other all around the world, understanding who we are, what we go through, realizing that we're the same. Somebody was speaking, or I think speaking earlier, and it was actually triggering of some things I've experienced in the corporate workplace, going, oh yeah, you know, and when you hear the name Women Speakers Association, think, oh, you're professional speakers or anything like that. No. Women Speakers Association is a platform for women, us everyday women doing a variety of different things all over the world, to share our voice. And we can share those voices and be able to meet and connect with other women around the world. The books are powerful. So someone was saying earlier, I wish I knew, right? And every time I hear that, that's so frustrating, because it's us that stop that wish we knew. Today, I will intentionally, I have conversations with women around the world all the time, and I'll say, hey, give me your top 3 speakers, or top 3 people in sales, or top name drop. And it's all promotion of men. So we go back, and I'll say, well, can we replace that? If you'd like to be that change, can we help? Can I introduce you to women who are also doing that? And now I play in that the far extreme. I'm 100% women, only hold the microphone in Women Speakers Association, just because to set the stage for women to come in and know that and give that safe place. So that's not to say that men don't have anything great to say. Of course they do. And but we have to take stands in our own actions. And Voices of the 21st Century started off as a book just like that over 6 years ago, where when I was researching women of the early 1900s for my son's school project, we found what women did, but we didn't find out who they are. And you listen to every single woman on this call and you go, oh man, wow, right? She's doing all that, plus she's making those sandwiches in the morning, plus she's doing this, plus she's doing that. And what it is, a book about us, everyday women. How do we get our stories out there? We're not the celebrities. We're not the ones with the big financial resources to push a book out. We need our everyday voices to be able to get out there. And when I fast forward to just a couple of weeks ago, this last one that just came out, we've been able to share over 300 women's voices. and take them around the world and leverage as a collaborative community to leverage our reach and get these stories out there so that the story will find the reader and share our individual experiences. Because that's when we get to know each other and we get to know our stories, then we learn, we see that we're the same, you know? And just hearing on this call today, you're each saying something, I'm going, oh yeah, well, I think like that too. I think like that too. And it's beautiful to connect with all of you. So thank you, Ed, for pulling us all together. This is amazing.
It's going to get better. Here's Annalisa and Melinda. Annalisa.
Hey, thank you, Ed. Yeah, I mean, first of all, I just want to say, Lynn talked about we can't change our bias, we can only become aware of it and manage it. I would like to think that we can. And we are the product of generations, centuries and centuries of generational programming. And we can't change that programming overnight. Yes, there are systems to break. Yes, there are protests to make. But as many people have said here, it starts with us. I posted about microactions earlier today, that it does start with those microactions. Now, some people, as I say, have talked about changing our actions, but those actions start with our thoughts. And those thoughts start with our beliefs, go back to our beliefs, and they start with our values and our value system. And I'd like to think that we can change our biases by recognizing our values, what our belief system is based on, and how that is influencing our thoughts and our behaviors. So, for example, recording what we're thinking, reflecting on what we're thinking, repeating that will slowly rewire our thinking. So are we judging? Are we judging that woman over there? Why are we judging that woman? Do we feel threatened by that woman over there? Why do we feel threatened? Am I jealous of that woman over there? Why do I feel jealous? Have I blocked the progress of that woman in my workplace? Why did I do that? We have to start examining our thoughts, and sometimes that involves going into places we don't feel comfortable in ourselves, because we don't like going into the corners of our own personalities that we know let us down. They're not, they're not favorable, they don't serve us well, but we tend to brush them under the carpet. We don't like to confront those situations where we ourselves have been part of the problem. But unless we do that, we're just going to continue pointing the finger at everybody else, and we're going to continue being part of the problem, not the solution. So it does come down to us. Yes, we do have to speak out. Yes, we do have to make our voices heard in our governments, in our nations, but we also do have to examine what we're doing as well. We have to look at the language, as many people have said here today, the language that we're using, because, for example, I'm going to just quote a personal example. I'm not married, I don't have children. I'm the product of the choices that I've made in my life. I'm not necessarily saying that I wanted to be here, but yeah, my choices have brought me here. Now, I caught up with an old school friend, a guy that I used to date many, many years ago at school. It ended acrimoniously, no surprises there. We met for a coffee and he said to me, well, you're a spinster now, aren't you? And I said to him, no, I'm not a spinster. I've just been too focused on my mission. I've made that a priority to have the time to prioritize a relationship, for the commitment of a relationship. And he said to me, well, my mum says you're a spinster now. And now he's got 4 children. Now, if he is going back and saying grandma thinks Annalisa's a spinster because she's never got married, those 4 children are going to carry on picking up the language. It's just going to carry on from generation to generation. So this is why I'm passionate about, yes, reaching Generation Z, reaching Generation Alpha, because it has to start in the home, and it can only start by recognizing what we're thinking, what we're saying, our values and our beliefs, and challenging those. But we have to become more self-aware to do it.
I can't talk. Melinda.
That is so positively powerful, Annalisa. Thank you so much for that. Love being in the company of women from the global network, because that is how we get the input and see the differences in the women structure. So thank you for those of you who have shared so freely regarding that. I did some work with the Bank of Riyadh, an extended amount of work. And for me, as a free American, it was pretty eye-opening for me that the women went to one bank building and the men go to another bank building. There is no mingling of people. So that's just an aside, but that's just one of the many things that I learned about that. I want to segue kind of into what Annalisa was talking about our thoughts becoming things and the generational constructs that are carried forward. And that is that we have to be very careful about what we're telling ourselves every morning. I've been working in the field of positive psychology for, well, since its start. So it's been about 15 years now, kind of behind the scenes first. It's finally making its way into the forefront. But one of the things that I hear that really kind of puts me on edge is this positive toxicity. And for me, that is the ultimate oxymoron. Do you want to have a positive life, or do you want to have a negative life? Do you want to have positive relationships, or do you want to have negative relationships? As a woman, do you want to be a positive example, not just to women, but to the world at large, that, you know, you have gifts that you're bringing, you have thoughts, you have ideas. Having been working in the corporate field for about 20 years now, part of the reason I did the book, The Power of Positive Conflict Resolution, and highlighting courageous conversations is, someone mentioned this earlier. So if a man is in the boardroom or in a meeting and has a very forceful conversation about what he believes and the action that needs to be taken, oh yeah, he's really got some values and some strength around that. But let a woman have that same kind of forcefulness and she becomes, I'm just going to use the word, the bitch, right? And so it is important that we, as women, not only, again, back to authenticity, that's the last line of my book. Authenticity equals freedom equals joy. Until we can become completely comfortable in our skin, until we can say, this is who I am and this is what I stand for. I don't care what you think about me. It's none of my business what you think about me. What my business is about is being a positive, powerful model for humanity. I want truly to positively impact humanity, and I do that one individual at a time. And the way that happens for me most often is either through my coaching clients or through going into corporations where I've got leaders in a group and I can help them to explore the language. You all are spot on. It is all about the language. Are we building relationships or are we breaking down relationships? I had a high-level person in a corporation, a well-known corporation, and we were talking. They said, well, I don't know if we want all of that touchy-feely stuff. And I kind of made the hair on the back of my neck stand up, because those are actually essential business skills. If you take a look at what companies are needing now, they don't need the technological know-how. They need people who know how to communicate. They need people to know how to empathize. They need to have people that know how to work one-on-one with each other. People used to call them the soft skills, but I like to call them the essential business skills. So when she said that, when he said that, I shouldn't have even said that, right? But when that was said, I said, well, let's think about this. What makes business go? And the answer was, well, I suppose relationships. And I said, so what do you have to have a relationship? Well, you have to connect. right? You have to connect with the person. We're connecting today. We're connecting hopefully with the audience worldwide. How do you connect? You have to touch and you have to feel. You can't get electricity from a lamp until you connect into the source energy. And so when we can really begin to connect and have that touchy feely, that is going to allow me to step back and actively listen to you and what your thoughts, what your ideas are, honor your conversation, and then for you to do the same thing for me, that's how we can begin to really level that field, help everyone to understand we've all got, they're not good ideas or bad ideas, they're different ideas. And the key is let's explore them. But without that defensive language, then we don't make it out of the room without another meeting on the meeting. So I've really enjoyed being here. Ed, you're amazing at bringing all of these wonderful women as well as the world into our Zoom meeting. And thank you so much for that. Ladies, I've enjoyed listening to each of you so much today. I've taken copious notes and I'm looking forward to remaining in touch with you all.
Thank you. I started this program 3 years ago this week because the pandemic stopped, crashed, and burned my live conference business that I was doing consistently for 30 years. And we're going back to live in London on May 9, and Annalisa will be one of the speakers there. And we'll also Zoom it, so the speakers and the sponsors have the world, not just 50 people in a lunchroom. Be a nice room, but only 50 or so, and instead of 1 million. So I want to thank you. We have to end this in around 12 minutes or so, but come back and do it again, and let's do a work in progress reading or something. So you know, I've learned so much just keeping my mouth shut here. You know, I'm going to look at this program again later this afternoon because I have to upload it and snip and tuck a little bit here and there, and then get it ready. And then I'll send each of you a link. I'll send you 2 links. One will be a gallery show, which is what we've been looking at. But we also have a mechanism here for Hollywood close-ups, so that the only person on the screen will be the one speaking. And so I hope you like that. So you can use whichever one you want. I'm going to post both. The feedback I'm getting from doing that kind of 2-tiered production method has really been interesting. And women like the Hollywood close-ups more than the men do. I'll tell you that. How about that? Lynn, thank you for being responsible for my energy to do all this program during the month, as well as the other shows that we've done together. Lynn?
Yeah, I just want to say this has been fabulous. It's been fabulous to meet all these women and hear their support and their interests and what they've experienced and their ideas and their solutions. I want to close with bringing up one thing that we haven't yet talked about, but it's so important. And I think we've talked around it a little, but it's intersectionality.
What's that?
And I actually wrote a chapter of this in my book. And that's when sexism, sexism, the biases that that are impacting her concerning sexism are combined with another bias. So it could be sexism and racism. So when you look at the research and data, women of color experience far more setbacks and issues, harassment, microaggression when you combine sexism with racism than white women do. Another example is sexism and ableism. So women with disabilities experience far more of the violence topics, rape, abuse, harassment, than any other women do, regardless of color. There's sexism and ageism, and whether maybe you're too young or too old. And right now, ageism is a big topic, but it's typically because it's about women, towards women, and combined with sexism. So as we move forward and think about these issues and think about what we can do and listen to our language, that's another important thing to think about is, where is a woman, the issues that she's experiencing, the sexism she's experiencing, is that combined with something else? And if so, how is that impacting her? So I just want to thank everyone for being here. It's been a fabulous discussion.
Thank you. Sandra, what's next on your plate for tomorrow?
Well, okay, so for tomorrow, there's going to be at 12 o'clock Saudi Arabian time. I'm doing these live conversations, probably from what you've seen, or maybe not. I'm very transparent. I don't intend to use many filters in the way that I talk and what I try to say. I think that we've lost the opportunity to be honest, to speak our words exactly how we want them to sound. And Lynn, you said something very interesting. You know, one of the things that I've learned as I aged gracefully is that as I age, my values shift. They shift to a more conservative side, but then at the same time, I'm facing the hypocrisy of my own beliefs and values. And that's when I have to check myself. And that is what I try to do with these shows, to say, okay, I'm thinking this way, but I also know that this is this way and this way and this way. It somewhat attracts people, but what I'm trying to do is for people to be honest with themselves and not be afraid of what they want to say. Right? And use the right words, which is what we've been talking about in this entire show. We like wanting to say Karen. Sometimes I watch videos and I'm like, is this really a Karen? Come on, people, don't label people in that way. Or how about if we stop using the word bitch? Like, seriously, this does not belong amongst ourselves. The problem is that even as women, we joke around about it, you know, with our friends, but it's like saying the N-word. I'm sorry, but it's like saying the N-word, right? You get to say it, but you don't get to tell me that way, right? And start changing the way that we treat people, or the way that we are perceived by other people. We have to be honest with ourselves and start evaluating the hypocrisy as we age, and how we change, and how we treat people and the people that we're surrounded by. So that's what the program is about tomorrow and every single day. There's always a different topic, and it's about disagreeing to agree. Because I do truly believe that, like today, we're talking about different topics and you might not agree with me, but it might bring you awareness. So thank you very much, Ed, for that.
Talk to me about expatology. Did I say that right?
Yes, expatology. So one of the things that I've done is that in the 20 plus years that I've been in global mobility, with let's say a 5-year rest, but it hasn't stopped me from informing myself and getting involved in all the process of what is going out there, right, in life. And so I realized that in 2017, I stopped working. I was still working here in Saudi Arabia. That's why I expatriated. But then I gave myself 1 year, 1.5 years to rest. And when I wanted to go back to work, I could not believe how the workforce had changed, how the words have started to change. And I was like, what is this? What is that? What are you talking about? Psychological safety. Oh my God. I couldn't understand all these words. And so I started studying. I studied to be a coach. I started ICQ, global mindset. I went into culture. I went into ecology, which is the study of science of life and death. I went into botany, which is the study of plants, into life and death, and so many other topics that I started realizing, oh my God, at the end of the day, it's about human behavior. Everything that I've accumulated is towards human behavior, because expats manage to start working, but they forget about the human side of the process. They're forgotten by the global mobility specialists. They don't get the support that they need towards dealing with daily life, children, success, failing, having the stress of, will I be able to deal with my mother's passing and having to go back home? How long will I have? And then go back to work. I mean, there's so many things that we do not support the expat. All we want is just, okay, you're done, don't bother me anymore, and that's it. But that's not how you give support to expats. So as I gathered all this knowledge that I had, I started working into creating a program that would support expats, not only in the global mobility, which is, telling them where to go, the culture shock and everything else, but now also into training them and helping them into being the model of their family, and in supporting their spouses into finding a job, and the importance, because we are forgotten as women, how important it is for us to be able to and children are mostly more the ones that are more forgotten, because we believe that, oh, children are children, they're going to manage it, they're okay, they don't speak the language, but they're going to find ways to play. You want to play with me? Yeah, okay, we move on. It doesn't happen that way. They too go through struggles that we ignore. So everything, I've combined that, and I made it into let's say a study of the ways that global mobility life happens, and I decided to call it expatology. So that's
and now you're going to enter into, these people don't know this, but I know because you told me, you're going to repatriate back to Houston. And that is somebody else that I interviewed a couple of years ago experienced that. She called it the need to rewire your brain, because life will be very different from what you've been experiencing the past 9 years or so.
Exactly. It's not the same to go back on vacation for 1 or 2 weeks and you're happy and smiling because you're not going to have to deal with those people anymore, and you come back home and you're like, phew. But now it's like, oh wow. Now you're getting ready to all the changes and getting back into society and working, and there's so much that you don't think about. How much, if in the corporate world lingo changed in no more than 1.5 years, what can I expect for society to be now that I'm returning after 8-9 years? That's a big shock.
It will be. So Annalisa, we have like a minute, and then we got to move around quickly, and then we got to close. So Annalisa, you're all about values. Make Your Mark is about discovering your own values. Is that right?
Discovering your own values, for organizations to discover their authentic values and be true to those values. So they're living those values out. I was reminded by a post of somebody else who works in the value space, actually, Alan Williams, this morning, about the disastrous impact of the McDonald's campaign a few years ago, when they inverted their M to a W, and they attracted such a huge backlash because they weren't living out those values. And of course, everybody said, well, the way that you how you pay your, the women who work for you, and your conditions and everything else. How dare you? If an organization just tries to piggyback onto a movement like this, but they're not living those values out, then especially in this social age that we're living in, that's going to, it's going to have a catastrophic impact for them. So they need to understand that they have to live out the values they are professing to deliver out publicly on their PR, on their websites, in their foyers, on their boardroom walls. They have to be living those out. So it's getting everybody on the same page, but it's also It's also empowering the women who, sorry, the people, well, women and men, people who work within those organizations to have a say in those values. What do they think those values are? And to be values aligned, because that's where you get the real power. And of course, yes, it is about our individual values as well. And understanding the power. Don't undervalue the power of values is what I say, because they are powerful. They do drive us. They're one of our unconscious driving systems that influence the choices that we make, our behaviors, our actions, everything else, our thoughts, what we say. And so they're driving us somewhere. They might be driving us to the sunshine state. They might be driving us to a dead end or off a cliff or around the bend. So when we are aware of that, and we start to explore it, then we can take control of it and get in the driving seat as opposed to being driven.
Thank you. Yes, Tineke.
I want to add something to the conversation, what my belief is why women make other women wrong. Because I saw a man writing a post and he tagged me today and he said, you know, I love to help women, but there's one thing I never understand, and that is how women bitch to other women. And he also said, and I also don't understand why women are acting so insecure. And I said, well, that's probably the root cause, because we are, people are insecure. And we grow and we grow and we grow and we work and we work and we work. Men don't show their insecurities, women do. But when you see something that you resist in somebody else, it's always something that you need to work on within yourself. Yet that is not an easy thing to acknowledge, because it's usually something that you're not allowed to because of your beliefs and your values or your upbringing. So it's easier to make someone wrong than to look inside. What does this say about us? Because when we point at someone, we always point four fingers towards ourselves. And I think jealousy is typical women, but it's low feminine. High feminine is embrace, support, accept, acknowledge. So I think that is important to know. Why do women do that? It's probably, and it's my belief, an act on our insecurities. So that is what I wanted to add to the conversation, Ed.
Lynn, please summarize.
Did you come back to me, Ed?
Yes, please.
Okay. Yeah, so just to touch on that, I just want to quickly talk about, and I know you all have heard of that, is where women are damned if they do or damned if they don't. So that gets back to the masculine, feminine, male, female, that if you act feminine, you're damned because you're acting too soft. If you act masculine, you're damned because you're not acting like a woman. And if you're in a leadership role, a feminine woman shouldn't be in a leadership role because it's a masculine role, and a more masculine styled woman shouldn't be in a leadership role because it's a masculine role, but she's also not acting feminine. So I think that's important to bring out is we all act, typically we don't force it, we act like we naturally do. And all women are up against those issues. The other thing is, I would say women don't support other women because of sexism. We are all sexist, and women can believe, just like men, that women shouldn't be successful, women shouldn't be in certain roles, women shouldn't be doing certain jobs. So I personally don't like to use the word jealousy, because that in and of itself is assigning something supposedly only to women and women's behavior. So my belief is, and my research is, that women don't support other women because of sexism. But to really just wrap up, I think it's been a great conversation with lots of different opinions and perspectives. And it's a great, the conversation has been good for International Women's Day, because you may have seen a lot of the posts out there that a lot of women are upset that International Women's Day has been turned into meaningless speeches, cute memes, and pink cupcakes. which it shouldn't be. It should not be a party, it should be a protest. And so I think we've done a great job here of not making it a party, but making it a protest and really speaking to women's issues and what we need to do, men and women, to eliminate that 300 years until gender equality and let it be tomorrow, right? So thanks, Ed, for having us.
I thank you all. And let's end this on that note. And come back again on Global TV Talk Show, please. Thank you.
Thanks, Ed. Bye, everybody.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Ed.
Ed.
See
Bye,
you.
everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye bye,
Thank you.
everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.